So yes, so the Pro and Con show for Friday, August 9th, uh, around 15 minutes every day. Try to encourage us all to be better citizens. Try to encourage us to at least listen to each other, to the opposing views. And I've talked a lot about bias in the information streams that are available to us. But today I just really want to talk about, because one of the things I try to talk about is ways to potentially enhance government. Um, and so I mean, there's various ideas that people have, and uh, if the government were run the right way, the way that we would do this is we would examine the various issues, and we would spend actually some days, and we'd have various experts, in the issues, the information around that issue, and they would give their, observations, data, whatever they've got, and we would all listen to that. Now, of course, most of us would not watch the entire thing, maybe just watch summaries that we'd have organized for the average citizen. But and then over the course of just a few days, you would really be able to delve as just about as deep as you'd ever need to into any of these issues, as far as understanding the history and the background. And then you could go forward with some ideas about what we want to change, to change, course correct history, if you will, and then that, based on some ideas around what we would want to change, then we debate the merit of those ideas, and then end up formulating policy and law, and then move on. Well, today I'd like to talk about taxes and just talk about ideas. So I think that taxes should be much simpler. The tax code should be much simpler. And it's all about transparency. I think government, the more transparent it is, the more obvious that as to how it works and what's happening, the more obvious that it is, then the easier it is for the average citizen to understand it and to be able to give input into what happens. And so currently our tax code is horrific. And if you are an adult and you live in this country and you work at all, you end up filing taxes, and the tax code is unbelievably complicated, and most of us only see like the tip of the iceberg, because we kind of fill in the forms, and you mostly kind of just follow the instruction. But there's a lot of depth behind that, and in fact, depending on just how complicated things are for you, then it can get extremely complicated, and people end up hiring tax lawyers and stuff like that, because the tax law, especially if you have a significant business holdings, multiple business holdings, and so on, it can be very onerous. And then, of course, everyone is trying to not pay tax and looking for the loopholes in the law that will allow them to not pay tax. And some of our most wealthy, either individuals or corporate citizens of our country, end up paying little or no tax because they have figured out the loopholes in the tax law. In fact, the loopholes, I would argue, are there because they have basically paid for their puppets to run the government and insert those loopholes into the tax law. So to me, if we really want to fix this particular issue of taxes, what we would do is greatly simplify them. So there would be just a set tax law, and just as an example, maybe it is every year you pay 1% of your net worth plus, I don't know, 15% of your income, just gross income. And that, by the way, would cover, your like Social Security, your federal income tax, your state income tax, your whatever, like healthcare, kind of fundamental healthcare kind of thing. There'd be, all of these things would kind of be covered by that, roughly that kind of tax burden, and and you would just pay it, okay, and it would be automatic, effectively. You would just pay it. And it would automatically, if you were working in a factory or at a company and earning, regular wages, it would just automatically be withdrawn. And as far as like your net worth, well, the various banks and whatever that would hold the information about you, that would automatically be forwarded to the federal government, and you would just, you would verify, yes, I still own this house, I still own this car, I still own, whatever, and then it would all come together, and the tax would just, you receive a tax bill, and that would be it, and you pay it. And so what would happen then is the people that had the most money and the most income would pay, on absolute terms, that is in total dollars, they would pay more than the poorer people, okay? But on a percentage basis, everyone would be pretty much paying the same, or would be paying the same. And so what does that mean? Well, generally one of the big arguments about, raising taxes on the rich is that, it might cause them not to want to reinvest or participate in the economy or whatever. I don't believe in those things personally, but those arguments are made. And in this case, hey, what I'm saying is that for every dollar that they make, they would retain, a big percentage of it, 75, 80% or whatever, and then they would pay the rest in tax. And so they are still incented to continue to grow, their businesses or holdings or whatever. And then this is where the transparency thing comes in. So instead of having the tax code with, incentives for mortgage, where you can take off some of the cost of a mortgage because they're trying to incent people to own homes. Don't do that. That's separate legislation. So everyone pays, and then of course the poorest people, if they don't have any income at all and don't have any assets, they don't pay anything. But if they do have some income and do have some assets, but it's relatively low, they would pay a portion of it, and then we would have separate legislation that would be these social programs to try to lift them out of those lower income levels. So there'd be maybe some additional health support, maybe some additional education, retraining, maybe some help with housing, these kinds of things. But again, separate legislation. So you would end up helping certain peoples that were struggling, and you'd give them a hand up, but it would be through separate legislation and not part of the tax codes. So that's and to me, we would go through a lot of things this way and really try to I guess the main point being to make them transparent, so you can simplify the laws, simplify the structure so that it's easier for the average person to understand what's going on. And in the case of a simplified tax code, it'd be pretty darn easy to estimate how much money the federal government would receive, your state governments would receive, and so on, and therefore what their budgets would be. And if you were struggling with balancing the budget or something, then you would know that, well, and we need to increase the taxes like 1% this year in order to balance the budget, and it would be straightforward, and you just do it. Okay, well, that's it for tax transparency. This is the Pro and Con Show. I'm Michael James Ott. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again tomorrow. Till then, bye for now.